Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 44 with Sue Woodard. We're already starting off with a bang in the background with Mace picking on me. Sue's never watched this show. She doesn't know. She's questioning her life choices right now.
I love my life choices right now. Good stuff.
All right, let's jump right in. Our guest today really does not need any introduction, but we're going to do one anyway. Sue Woodard is a 30-plus year mortgage industry veteran who started as a loan processor, became a top-producing originator, and somehow ended up as one of the most in-demand speakers and fintech executives in the business. She currently serves as senior advisor at STRATMOR Group and proudly carries the self-appointed title of evangelist at large for the mortgage and fintech world. Along the way, she's been chief customer officer at Total Expert, hosted her own financial radio show, popped up on CNBC, and racked up awards like they were going out of style. She holds a double major in finance and business management from Augsburg College and Minneapolis with a minor in economics because apparently one major wasn't enough. Outside of her work, Sue is what you might call an adrenaline enthusiast. She skydived over Vegas, firewalked on hot coals, rode a Harley down Route 66, ran a Ragnar relay through the Arizona desert, and cage dived with great whites in South Africa. But ask her what tops all of that, and she'll tell you it's raising her millennial daughter back home in Minnesota. She also sits on the board of Hope for Youth, fighting youth homelessness, and Access Lending Academy, helping people launch careers in the mortgage industry because building up people is her kind of thing. Sue.
Wow, that was a deep dive.
That was deep. Was all of it correct?
We went way back.
The Sharks and the CNBC, all of it true?
Yeah, all true. But wow, that was, like I said, that was a deep dive. So I think Claude did a good job there. But
there you go.
All true. But so glad to be here. So thanks for having me.
Maybe that's what it is. Okay, so Sue, how we always joke on here. Like nobody is a little boy or a little girl going, geez, when I grow up, I want to be in mortgage tech. So how did you find yourself? I mean, you've run the gamut from kind of every angle, throughout the industry, but how did you get here in the first place?
How'd I get here? Crazy enough, it is like everybody, it's a weird story. So I was working at a credit union. I was like opening checking accounts and doing car loans. And the branch I worked at in Minneapolis kept getting robbed. And the last time we were robbed, it was my roommate and one of my best friends robbed at gunpoint. And it was like, it was scary. And we had to go down to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and look at, mug shots and all these crazy things. I'm like, I got to find a different branch to work in. And the only branch had a job open in a different location was a mortgage processor. And I was like, I'm going to go do that. I don't even know what those people do, but that's going to be my deal. So I jumped right into the mortgage industry as a processor about 1 billion years ago, and honestly just fell in love with this business. And yes, it's had a lot of interesting twists and turns, and as all of our careers do, but that's how it all began.
So if it wasn't for crime, we wouldn't have Sue in this industry.
That is true. That is actually true. But
we have a series of criminals to thank for.
Yes,
we do. Our lives.
I don't know if they ever caught that guy, but I have to say it was actually because it's a unique start. Most people courageously dive right into being a loan officer in this business, and I actually going through operations first. I actually kind of tried to learn a few things before I started selling mortgages. So.
Yeah, and I didn't know that about you until it had run this. So it definitely makes a difference. I mean, I started as an underwriter on the secondary side, and I'm always grateful that I had the years on operations that I did, because it definitely helps when you're on the other side of the coin.
You bet.
Now you started off, what was sort of, I guess there's a double question here. So you are a extremely well-known figure in the industry, right? Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure that I could ask anyone I know who is Sue Woodard, and they're gonna know, right? So I have kind of two questions for you. Number one, what got you from the banking world into the technology world? Let's just start with that, actually.
Yeah. No, that was kind of a fun part of my journey. So I loved originating, and like I said, I actually was working at shops that were cradle to grave back in the day. So we would, like, countrywide, right? So we would
Yep.
originate, process, underwrite, close, fund, ship, scrub the toilets. I mean, it was like you're doing everything. And I actually, in the early 2000s, is when I started as a loan officer getting engaged in some of the tools and technologies, such as they were, that were out there. And I actually created this little overlay onto Act. You guys, like, you remember Act, right? Like, I was creating, this own little app. I was even, selling to some people back in the day. But I got involved with Mortgage Market Guide, way back when, and had the opportunity, very early stage. We were still faxing things to people at that time. It's like alerts to lock were coming via fax. And then it was on to beepers and pagers, I mean, all these crazy things. But I got in very early and really started to get engaged on the technology side, really serving and supporting loan officers. But I was doing both. I was originating, doing quite a bit of volume. I was doing some national sales training at that point, and working in the technology side. And it was, June 30th of 2007, we made the decision to sell that business. And it was like 14 seconds later, the industry melted down. And you had to make a decision about what path you're going to go down, because you couldn't do both. You're going to have to put 150% into whichever path you're going to go. And I was really enjoying the technology side so much more, because you got the opportunity to serve a lot of the lenders out there, serving the families and the people out there, getting them into homes. And so it was just one of those juncture points. I knew I couldn't do it all. And so I decided to go down the technology path at that point.
All right, there you go.
I was going to ask, what looks different now compared to back then in terms of the landscape of, I guess, like solutions out there, I guess, general landscape of tools being built? Is it the same thing, just newer technology, or is it like, has it actually materially shifted or
No, that's such a good question, PK. And there's a few interesting things. So it was around kind of 2008 to 2009 when there was this digital revolution. I remember the first like MBA annual conference where everything was digital revolution. We're all going to go digital and everything's going to become amazing. And at that time, there was a lot of talk around somebody was going to come up with an end-to-end solution, and everything would be in there. So you'd have your point of sale, you'd have your PPE, you'd have your LOS and pricing and everything, and everything would be in one platform. And it really went away from that, as we all know, where it turned into we actually need all these specialized solutions, and we'll put them all together like Lego bricks, and then APIs and integrations will magically happen, and data will flow, and it'll all be a magical wonderland. So you're laughing because that did not turn out exactly like everybody had hoped it would, right? You guys know, being in the tech space, it didn't work out that way. The cost of doing a mortgage is still over $11,000, and technology was promised back there. Oh, we're going to reduce all your costs so much. Didn't happen. It's just added to costs, right? So some of the things that have evolved is that it's coming back to, as lenders are, really sharpening their pencils over the last few years and saying, man, we got to make some good decisions. They're looking at these tech stacks, or Frankenstacks, as we like to call them at STRATMOR, of these things that are all bolted together and don't talk to each other. People are kind of going back to, can I get rid of a bunch of these and find a solution to at least solve a big chunk of them? So I think that's one of the trends that is interesting to watch. I don't know where that's all going to land. But I appreciate, almost like, I always try to look for I'm an optimist. I always try to look for the good things that in a tough market like we're in now. And I think one of the good things, and you all know this, but it's really challenged both lenders and tech companies to be really sharp about their use cases, their engagement, their adoption, their ROI story. You better know all those things, because I think that's it's not a nice to have, that's a must have.
Mm-hmm. You can't wing it.
That's right. That's right. You can't. And honestly, when we went through all of the, there's a lot of M&A activity. Well, people ended up with a lot of solutions kind of bolted on because we acquired this company and they have these tech stack and the loan officers are all going to revolt if we get rid of these. So people ended up with this crazy set of solutions. And I think people are saying we can't support 5 CRMs and 3 LOSs and 2 PPEs. We actually have to make some really smart strategic decisions. So we'll be better coming out the other side, but it takes a while. It's just taking a while to get there.
Also, you've probably seen from like the range of experience you have there in the timeline of events. You've probably seen a lot of like tech companies come through and then say, "Hey, we're going to do X, Y, Z," and then maybe that they don't deliver on that, and lenders kind of have. We've had a couple lenders on the past, and they've kind of explained where they've been burned in their tech vendor relationships. So there naturally seems to be like a, I don't know, maybe pessimistic or kind of like butting heads in terms of like, oh, this vendor's really trying to take advantage of me, because maybe that used to be the lay of the land, so to say, a while back. Like how is that kind of, I guess, change, or how do you put that in the context of the, I guess, from what you've seen over the years?
It's a great point. I actually wrote an article for STRATMOR on exactly this topic, and I was using the analogy of couples therapy. Because I actually put that on a flight, and there's a show called Couples Therapy. I don't know if you knew this. And I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel of things to watch. Like I'd seen everything that Delta had. I'd seen all the movies. And I was like, oh God, okay, I'm going to watch Couples Therapy. And it was like fascinating and like weird because these couples are coming. It's like a reality show, but it's like these real couples going through therapy. And it did get me thinking about, it's so indicative of the relationships between lenders and their tech providers, where sometimes they're like, okay, we're in a long-term committed relationship, but things aren't going well, and we need to figure out how to work it out. Almost always, just like in real life relationships, as well as these lender tech vendor relationships, there's expectation setting. Expectations are here and real life turns out to be something different, as well as communication. And it's just, like I said, just like in, our personal relationships, those things very often, I don't know, are you all married?
I am not.
Yeah, I
working on that.
Part of that, Sue, I feel like I have to deal with the X sometimes. Like we're playing cleanup with all the goons out there saying the words AI, and then we come along and they're like, "Oh, we were burned like this and this." Like, I'm not your ex.
Oh, for sure, paying for the sins of other providers,
of the other relationships. Exactly. But I do think, to your good question. And yes, that would be an interesting thread to pull about, what you're dealing with as you come in, based on what has happened. But I do think that there's growth needed on both sides. It's not one-sided. It's very easy for a lender to point at the vendor to be like, you told me all these things and none of these things are true. But what's also true is that very often lenders absolutely refuse to embrace a new way of doing things. They're trying to jerry-rig or wedge back into, this is the way it's always been. And it's like, yeah, but our technology is built to do something totally different and cooler. And if you actually listen to our best practices and try some of them, maybe you'll have better results. Loan officer engagement. I've spent a lot of my career working on that. That's a whole other interesting topic as well. So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about STRATMOR Group?
Please.
What is it that STRATMOR Group does exactly?
So many amazing things. So STRATMOR Group is actually, it's our 40th year. So and so it's a really it's got a very storied history in the mortgage industry, very focused, one of I would say one of the first consulting groups that really focus exclusively on the mortgage industry. And in terms of the span of work that STRATMOR does, it covers a lot of bases, including working with, at any given point in time, I feel like we're working with, most of the top lenders that are out there, both in banking, credit union, and IMB, on their operating system. It might be tech procurement and kind of analyzing the different technologies out there, reviewing their tech stack and helping them make better decisions, helping their implementations of technology go more effectively and strategically. We have a very thriving M&A practice that Garth Graham oversees. I help run a program that I created called the Solution Provider Advisory. Andrew, you and I have talked about that a little bit, but it's really helping the tech providers do a better job of telling their story and connecting. We do secret shopping for lenders, which is like when you see some of the things that are out there right now. Customer journey work, we're starting some AI advisory work. So there's a lot of really interesting a mortgage CX program. It's a customer experience program, kind of gauging and providing data on how the lender is performing for their customers. What do they like? What don't they like? Where are the friction points? And what can they do to change it? So, I mean, a lot of really cool things across the board. The peer group roundtables that we do with the Mortgage Bankers Association are in process right now. A lot of cool data and surveys. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Now, how did you make your way? So obviously you were at Total Expert. Like what made the leap from, doing what you were doing at Total Expert to go into the advisor role for STRATMOR?
Yeah, I loved my time at Total Expert, but I don't have to tell any of you that, life at a startup is unique, right? It's a unique lifestyle. So I really I had gotten to a point where I was just ready for a little bit of a shift. I loved my time there. I was honored to be the chief customer officer there. But I wanted to be in a position where I could help and influence and support other technology companies, because I think that's my joy, is connecting people, helping people. And I feel like moving into consulting, it provided more opportunities to help more companies, who in turn are helping more lenders, who in turn are helping more families get into homes. And so to me, it was kind of the next natural evolution. And it also, our lives all change. We have personal, we all have crazy lives. And, my mom has Alzheimer's. I'm a grandma now. I've got there's just things in life where it's like I needed a little bit more flexibility in my life to be able to be with my family. So, and Chris, you and I have talked about that before, it's important. It's the real stuff. So,
all right. So now we got to the personal stuff. This is where I want to talk. Can I go a little bit this way, Andrew, for a second? All right. Of all those little things you did, skydiving, sharks, whatever, what is the one you would do? What's the one you would tell? Like, if I was going to go, you were going to tell me you can only do one. What would you do?
Well, can you ride a Harley?
Yeah.
Okay. Then that Route 66, old Route 66 was like an amazing experience. I mean, and honestly, and I will say, I'm not going to say the actual term that it's called. I ride in back. I'll say my hubby is the guy who rides, and I am the navigator, the DJ, and so forth. But there is something, I think, especially when we're in the world that we're all in, and probably everybody listening is in. There's a lot of noise, and you really can't do anything else on a motorcycle except for be there, right? You can't be looking at your phone or responding to emails and taking calls and kind of multitasking and all these things. You're just there, and you're truly there in the atmosphere, and you're feeling it, and you're smelling it, and you're, it's just, there's something about it that's really freeing. So I don't know if the rest of you are motorcycle people, but it's highly recommended.
Now, are you a motorcycle person?
I am a motorcycle person, but as I said, I'm not going to use the term. There's a specific motorcycling term that you call it when you ride in back. I ride in back, and I'm delighted that my husband is the Harley guy.
Well, after we're done filming this, you all have to tell me the term, because I don't know the term.
I can't say it. I can't say it on air.
Oh, the young one.
Yeah.
Come on.
We know the term.
Okay. Let's talk about AI.
Yes.
You're talking, to lots and lots of lenders. I'm curious to get where your take is at. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I thought it was interesting because I felt like they kind of bucketed it perfectly, which was they said there's three camps of executives or just leadership in general around AI. The first camp is, I have to do something. I'm going to do it all myself. My IT department is smart enough, and I can vibe code my entire tech stack. That's number one. Number two is believes that all of their vendors, their existing vendors, like their LOS and their POS and their CRM, are going to build out all of their AI for them. And then the last group, and I would argue the smartest group, but whatever, is the group who knows that something needs to be done who actually needs to bring in like AI experts to help them in terms of understanding what the roadmap should look like, could look like, and how do you roll out more of a holistic AI plan across the company? What are you seeing?
I think that's actually pretty well laid out. I had somebody say to me the other day that they thought all the technology companies were going to go away and everybody's just going to be, vibe coding all their own technology, right? And I was like, there's that great quote by Ruth Porat, who's the president and CIO of Google and Alphabet, and she said there's two speeds to this. She said there is the speed of actual innovation, which is super fast. And she said that there's the speed at which humans can adapt to it, which is a much slower, much slower speed. And when I look at our industry, I go, okay, it's not going to just like, boom, everybody's vibe coding and creating things overnight. But I do think, the old, I forget what the curve was called, the diffusion of innovations. You've got the people that are very forward thinking, that are really embracing and have the dollars to be able to do it. Some of the big companies have multi-million-dollar technology budgets. Yes, they will probably go in and start creating some of their own things. Otherwise, I do feel like some of the existing companies, the tech companies that are out there, are going to be in positions utilizing AI like what you do. I mean, there's so many. I'm really super. I know we're not here to talk about Ask Bob, but I just think there's so many cool things that you're doing that are making things better for people. But you're utilizing AI in a way of bringing the solution there. I think it's possible that there are going to be some entrants coming in and saying, yeah, it's an LOS, it's AI powered, it's super lean and agile, and does all these things that it's the kind of thing that I think could replace some of the the big old standbys probably sooner than we think.
I'm going to be interested to see what happens in the LOS space, because it does seem like there's a fair amount of new entrants into that space, and I'm sure there's probably entrants that I don't even know about, right? But when we look at like Vespa and what they've done.
Vesta with a T.
Vesta. I'm all over the place. That's 2 for 2 today.
Wow. I love that there's no hesitation to like make fun of you.
Oh, no, none whatsoever. You've got Pylon, which is Peter Thiel's entry into the market. You've got Lendarch. Yeah. You've got I don't even know. Elfi is not super new, but newish. From that perspective, and I'm sure there's several that I'm missing that I'm not even thinking off the top of my head. But I think it still is the age-old problem, which is onboarding of new technology. Like the number one question we get from people is like, how heavy's the lift? What's it going to take? Right. And I think that's a problem we think about a lot.
Well, I'll tell you a couple thoughts on that, because I could not agree with that more. And it's something that since I've been on the technology side, it's something that you face, right, at every technology company. Because as much as we live, breathe, and think about our technology all the time, we have to understand, you go into a lender and they're worried about 18,000 different things. And they've got, oh my, hedging is doing this, and I don't know what's happening in secondary, and oh my God, they're dealing with so many things. And we come in, and I think very often technology companies, I guess, fail to appreciate the complexity of the businesses that we're heading into, right? So I think some of the things I've seen companies do very effectively in order to bring in a technology is number one, understanding why they are implementing this technology, like being really clear on what are exactly the pain points that I am trying to solve. Do I know if I'm trying to go from A to C, do I understand where A is at? Do I know where I'm starting? Do I have enough data to say if I think this is going to reduce a cost, do I actually know where my costs are? Do I have a way to measure this? Like being really clear about the pain points to be solved. I think sometimes people go in and they're like not clear about the problems that they're trying to solve. They just think something sounds cool, and then they're frustrated later when it's like, oh, this didn't work. Another huge one, and I think particularly on AI solutions, is bringing in the right stakeholders before, during, and after that decision-making process. And I mean from a like especially with AI, I think because there's so many unknowns and there's so much fear surrounding it. I saw a stat the other day that it's something like 60% of people are extremely terrified that AI is coming to take their job. Yeah, not just in the mortgage industry. I mean, this is everywhere, right? Yeah. And so I think when you're coming in with an AI solution, the immediate reaction, let's face it, of people in operations and probably a lot of people in production is going to be like, kind of resistant to it. And so I think I've seen companies form kind of an AI task force when they're making their decisions, and they're bringing in somebody from processing, from underwriting, from secondary, from, all of these departments, so that these decisions, number one, are not being made in isolation, and you're getting that viewpoint of making sure if there's unintended consequences, somewhere that you might not be thinking about. The other thing that you're doing is you're raising up champions for these things and saying, hey, this here to, this is here to help. Not that jobs aren't going to go away. That's just life. I mean, some will, but I think when people are focusing on, and especially with what you do, which I love, is it is here to support the people you have, not replace them.
100%.
So,
yeah.
So I think that's a big deal.
ATMs didn't do, ATMs came around. We still have bank tellers, right? Like we'll still have underwriters. We'll still have loan officers. Now, will those roles maybe look different? Yeah, but I think it's going to be more so where their energy and time is focused on where they're actually best served, right? Like, do we really need a 6-figure underwriter answering the same cryptocurrency question 4 times in one day, right? Like, that's just like a small example, right? But I think that's where, and I think you're spot on, and why it's so critical to have those committees that are deep diving in your operations, and also to let your technology partners talk to your operations people. Like we'll go in. I mean, that's something we talk about with people all the time. It's like, listen, we'll come in and do like a full consult for free. Like, let us, because if you ask the people what parts of your job do you not like, or what do you do that's a waste of your time, that's where you're going to find the AI gold. And that's where people are going to be like, oh shit, I don't have to do that anymore. Wait. Right? Like when you just say AI and you just leave it as like this broad, scary thing that I don't know what it is. But if you're like, hey, you're never going to have to fill out a 1003 again. Like, woohoo, right? Like sort of thing. And I think that's another way that people kind of need to be angling it.
Well, and I think the people, it is interesting because some companies, well, it's just like people, right? Some are they're into it. They've been, kind of been engaged with it, for years. And some people are still kind of nervously like, I'm not sure I know what all these acronyms stand for. So there's, people all over the spectrum. But I do think the more that you pick a solution and start on solutions where it is going to support and serve your people, rather than be an obvious replacement play, you're going to get a lot better. You're going to get a lot better adoption. Otherwise, people are like, I wonder why the underwriters don't want to use this like fake, AI underwriting. It's like, because they think they're going to lose their jobs. Right. I remember somebody saying a few years ago, they said that this one company, they had all this adoption and they couldn't but they said that the people who are adopting it are the ones trying to prove it wrong. That's the only thing they're doing. They said all their underwriters were like, it got this wrong. And this is why I can't be replaced. Okay, well, that's not a strategy for success. Right. So
I think it comes, particularly I think it comes from top down, like leadership, like what you talked about, like looping everybody in and making sure it's like a team effort and everybody's rowing in the same direction. I don't think that actually, I wish everybody did it like that, but I've seen examples where like leaders are talking about their people as if they're disposable and like, just getting rid of gutting a bunch of people onshore and then saying, hey, we're just going to have a bunch of people offshore do these tasks. And the offshore people do it at a fraction of the quality that the onshore people did it at. But on paper, it looks like it's cheaper. And so it just depends on your mentality. I think you have to respect the fact that your people are the ones helping you build your business, and these are tools to help them do better and do more and all of that. But if that's misaligned, I think then you kind of end up in a really bad situation.
Well, that brings up an interesting point, which is, will AI highlight great leadership even more, but also highlight crappy leadership, right? Like, are poor decisions going to be made around AI by crappy leaders? And 12 months from now, do we start seeing the leadership teams that were smart, that involved their line level employees and the decision making, are the ones who are thriving, and the other ones are just running into a wall?
It's also partly why people are going slow. I mean, it's like, I know folks who they don't want to be that stupid leader who did it wrong, and so they're being skittish about getting into it because they feel like, I don't know what I don't know, and it's moving so fast and I can't keep up because I got all these other problems. And so that's why I think it's smart to pick a solution that is going to serve and support your people, and then, but yes, execute properly. I mean, and I'm a huge fan of ensuring that you are working with both. There's a decision maker level, but there's somebody's got to administer this, right? Somebody's got to be kind of that administration level, whoever that is inside the company, ops, marketing, depends on the technology. But then it's that end user. I mean, I certainly have found over time, particularly in my time at Total Expert, when we would do NPS surveys, and you ask, and I would split it up. I'd ask decision makers, admins, and then the actual users. You hear a very different story quite often between those groups of how people think things are going. And that's one of the biggest disconnects that we find, is that, a decision maker will be like, I made a great decision. I didn't involve anybody else in the decision, but this is going to be great. I love it. And they throw it over the fence to people who already have a full-time job and already have a big backlog of other things they can't get to. They're not invested. They don't understand why this technology is coming at them, and they're resentful about it. Who do you think they're going to point the fingers back to when the implementation is not going smoothly? Not themselves. And so it's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see lenders make when they adopt technology, is not involving the right people during that point of decision making, so that you have that smoother buy-in. And again, especially with AI, where the fear factor is pretty high.
Also, to Andrew, your point about executives being a little bit, or I think it was Sue's point as well, but like being slow about adopting some of these tools. I think on the vendor side, there's a lot of also, like, lack of a better word, bullshit marketing that's being done to kind of create fear within executives, to be like, oh, if you don't do this, then like you're going to be left behind, or the rest of your business is screwed, and like everybody, and we had I forget who we had a few months back, but we've spoken with lenders before, and lenders will tell you like, hey, they think everybody else is like 10 steps ahead, when in reality everybody else is thinking that everybody else is 10 steps ahead, but they're not. And so there's kind of like this like paralysis that's happening. So there's a bit of alignment. Again, it's going back to the couples therapy thing of like, being honest and transparent, and like, trying to work together, rather than, a vendor saying, hey, we're doing all these crazy things over here, and then the lender's feeling like, oh, maybe my competitor is doing this too. But then you talk to the competitor and they're in the same exact boat as the other person. So
Yes. I mean, there's a number of really interesting, AI companies that we've got the ability, that we're working with at STRATMOR in this solution provider advisory program. But one of the things I tell them is, like, you're ahead of them in terms of, like, just like slow it down a little bit, and don't assume that they know what you do. Just because they're a successful CEO of a mortgage company, they're a successful CEO of a mortgage company. They're not the successful CEO of an AI company. Right. So, like, slow things down a little bit, dumb it down a little bit, and make sure you're not losing them, and they're nodding and smiling and like in the background trying to text their buddy to be like, what does this stand for? So it's, I just think that's reality. It's human nature. These folks have a lot of pressure on their shoulders, a lot on their plate, a lot in their minds, let alone whatever's going on in their personal worlds. And I just feel like, we have to, I know we got to be moving fast because AI is moving fast, but we need to bring people along with us.
Yeah. Well, the narrative, it's moving fast. I was telling Andrew that I'm becoming a bit of a doomer, and a little bit more pessimistic on the AI front. So
Really?
yes, I was talking to Brooke about this last week. We had Brooke from Meridian Link last week, and her and I were talking about some of the downsides of AI and kind of the flaws in with using these tools. And I'm changing my mind. I think I'm just getting jaded and a little bit more disappointed. I'm starting to understand the lender's perspective, where vendors promise all X, Y, and Z, and in reality, it's the same old technology, just different marketing and wrapped up in a new narrative when it's the same old thing.
Yeah, it is interesting. And Chris, probably last time I saw you, actually probably last time we would all have all seen each other was at a conference, right? And you walk through the vendor area and everybody sounds exactly the same. Like you can't tell what these companies do. They've got a cool, Prometheus. We digitize the process with AI. I mean, everything's revolutionizing everything with AI. But it's like you can't tell, like, what problem do you solve? What problem do you solve for a lender? Like, start there. Otherwise, everybody is nodding and smiling. I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. I wonder what you actually do. Just, and again, one of the things I love a lot about Ask Bob is it's easy to understand what you do and how you do it. I think that's pretty powerful.
It is funny though, because at the ICE conference, I did kind of notice that there was this sort of overwhelming theme of like, okay, but what do you do? Like,
Yes.
That's what I'm having a hard time understanding. Okay, so you had the fortune of being, on every side of the table, and have seen a lot of tech companies, some great, some good, some probably horrific. I'm sure there's been a couple dumpster fires in your lifetime, for sure. What do you think separates? What do you think separates great founders from bad ones?
Wow, what an interesting question. I would say in my experience, there's a couple of different things. One of the things that I loved and continue to love about Joe Wellew, founder of Total Expert, is that is a person who had all his chips in the middle of the table, and he was going to be all in and make this successful. And there was something about that to me coming into the company and making big decisions at that point in my career. I had, very different directions to go. But that for me, coming in to that company, as well as this translated very clearly to the customers, you knew that there was a commitment from him, that this wasn't part-time, this wasn't playing around, this was, a hobby, and I'm going to start this company and then I'm going to run off and do something else. I'm going to float around in Silicon Valley and then go skiing. I mean, it was like, there was no question in my mind that there was a very deep commitment to the customers being successful, period. And, so that's one thing. And I guess, the other thing is just, it's some of the basics, but I sometimes see that the basics are missing. Being clear about here's what we do, here's who we do it for, here's the metrics that are going to define our success, and here's how we're going to execute, and here's how we're going to stay in touch with each other in this company and show that we're executing. I mean, it's some of those things that I know it sounds so basic, but having worked with a lot of companies, from little young, startups with it's two guys and a PowerPoint, to some very large companies, it's actually shocking to me sometimes how much those basics are missing. And I would also say, in talking about specifically in financial services, and or obviously my heart has been in the mortgage industry, it's really deeply loving your customer and understanding them and raising them up when they have success. It's the best kind of marketing that you could do. Is you have a customer that like loves you and you've done something different, make them the rock star, because it kind of carries you along with it. But I actually talked to a company a couple of weeks ago where I'm like, I can't see any trace of any customers that you work with. I've looked at your website, I've looked at your LinkedIn, and they're like, well, we don't want to mention who our customers are because then our competitors might steal them. And I'm like, that seems like a problem to me. It's like, that's the best kind of marketing you can do. Put your logos up there.
You and I even talked about this. The moment, it was so funny. So we updated our entire website and we put a scroller on it with some of our clients, and it was so funny because I sent it to Sue immediately because I was like, see, we fixed it. Like,
It wasn't you who did this, but I mean, and it's people are different, I mean, it's just everybody runs their business a little differently.
You know what's funny is how many times I've been asked to not work with certain lenders. It's like, hey, can you not work with, or can we kind of sign an exclusivity agreement to this region of America, or can you not work with? That's happened to us quite a bit. Can we white label?
Yeah, you can. It's a big check.
Yeah, can you not do anything like this for any other company in America related to? We've had this, especially in the past few months. It's been like, it's funny how there's this like, we're all together in this together, and there's like, I feel like it's a little bit of like Mean Girls, where we're all friends, and like, but we're frenemies. We're a little bit like, I need to get an advantage, So it's like, but also like, if you could just not work with XYZ,
Isn't that interesting? But I will tell you something interesting about that. I remember early in my career when I first had started speaking, and I was an originator, and I was just giving away the farm. I mean, I was giving everybody my playbook and my, here's what I write in my marketing emails. And I mean, I was just like, like here. And somebody asked me like, well, you're giving away all your like, all those things. And it's like, but here's what I know is I know that it is a small fraction of people in this room who are actually going to execute on any of it. Right. And even if they do, what are the chances that I'm going to run into them and it's going to cost me a deal? It's infinitesimal. I mean, there's no way. And so
there's plenty of
I tend to an abundance mindset from that standpoint.
There's actually a joke within the startup community of the way to find a first time founder is one that asked you to sign an NDA, right? Because the reality is like, dude, I'm too busy to steal your frigging idea. But like I'll tell everybody. I think NDAs are stupid. I mean, I sign them because people want me to occasionally, but generally speaking, I've just always thought they were kind of dumb. But ultimately, I'm with you. Like, most people are just too lazy. Like, they're not going to steal your idea. They're really not.
No.
And even if someone does, there's 8 billion people. Like, there's plenty of room. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
I know. But it is, you see this all over in the market right now, whether it's tech companies or lenders, the separator is the people that are executing. I mean, it's just.
So your personal brand, Sue, is that like something that you were intentionally focusing on forever, or when did that become like a very intentional focus or thought process for you?
Honestly, it was probably with my own. I remember having this moment when I was an originator, and I used to have a very specific, way that I would have my conversations with my borrowers, and I would have these great, I'd kind of take the 1003, but I'd take it in a different order so that I could talk them through and kind of guide them through this financial process. And it was great. And it was, it was pink if it was refinance, it was green if it was a purchase, and I'd take all the stuff and I would file it away in this drawer, and I would never talk to them again. I'd never call them again. And I remember one day, like a blinding flash of the obvious, that if I didn't take some action and reach back out to these people, like, I was probably never going to talk to the vast majority of them again. I mean, I'd like to think I'm so charming that they'd all like just dig up my phone number. I remember this lady literally telling me this story. This is what had woken me up to this. She called me and she's like, oh my gosh, you won't believe what I went through to try to find your card. Like, I had to go back up into my attic, and I was like, and there's spider webs everywhere, and I was digging through boxes, and I finally found it. And I'm like, it occurred to me where I'm like, I wouldn't have found my number if that was me. Like, I'm out at the spiders, and I'm like, why am I making it so hard? Like, I literally was not following up with anybody that I'd ever pre-approved. So I had this moment as an originator where I'm like, okay, dummy, like, you have a drawer full of money sitting there with all these pink and green sheets that you're never getting in contact with again. And I was like, I have to be the one to take the action. They shouldn't be digging for me. They should just reach out their hand and find my information right there. Right. And so it did start definitely a big shift in my, kind of my psyche as to how I would approach things and how I still approach things when I think about technology, especially for loan officers and, busy people, is how do you make it so that, kind of the magic just happens, or it's what we all want. You want to just reach out your hand and it's right there. And here's just the thing that I need just right where I expected it to be. But it's about, there's a layer of systems and execution and process that you have to have in order to make that happen. And it's like I said, it was a great question about founders, but it is one of the big separators that I see is people that talk a lot and do a few things, or people that have a system in place and they execute.
So what is something you've been wrong about before, Sue? 6 to 12 months later, you and Stratmore were like, oof, we missed it.
Well, I can't say Stratmore.
Okay.
But
Blame McCracken. Say McCracken did it.
Yeah. Oh, ooh, really? Nice. I wonder what he said. I'll tell you one thing I have been wrong about, just in terms of the market, is I just thought this was going to be over sooner. I'm an optimist, and so the minute that I would see a little ray of sunshine, I'm like, that's it, the corner's turning. And then it's like, oh shoot, no, it's not. And then it's like, okay, no, that's it. And this has been a long slog. I mean, it really is, and I think that puts a special burden on those of us that serve people in the mortgage industry, whether it's mortgage, real estate, the rest of financial services to some extent. I mean, this has been a tough time. And we even thought at the beginning of this year, I really genuinely, I was like, okay, now this is finally it. We can finally, and it's like, oh gosh, and now rates are back up again. So I just think there's an empathy there that we all have to have, and an understanding. I get frustrated when people talk about like, oh, loan officers are so lazy. They're not lazy, man. I mean, it's hard. It's hard out there. And I think there's just like I said, an understanding and an empathy, but I would say I've gotten that wrong pretty much every year for the last 3 or 4 years. I keep thinking, and we're not.
Well, things are always cyclical in mortgage whenever times are bad. So people always will remind me things are cyclical, but when COVID was high and everybody's crushing it, they're like, whoa, this train is never going to stop. And then when it stopped, it was like, oh shit, like we've been wasting money out there.
It did it again, just like it has, how many times before. It's very true.
Yeah, but it does, I would have like the number of loan officer NMLS numbers that are expiring every year is just climbing. And I think it is kind of weeding out the people that are that are not here for the long haul. I think it does allow people to refine their processes. And I think, like Sue, I'm sure you've heard this from every lender. When they're crushing it, I don't have time to innovate. I'm busy. Whenever they're slow, I don't have time to innovate. We're slow. I don't have the money. So.
Yeah, I know. It's just like a loan officer, right? Yeah, I mean, it is funny, but interestingly, the average age of a loan officer has dropped pretty precipitously. It's now 45.
Whoa.
For a long time,
wasn't it 54 or 55 just a year or two ago?
It was 55. It was in the mid 50s, and then the recent numbers that I just saw within the last couple of months is now that it's 45. But what I think is that it's not because there's a bunch of 45-year-old loan officers. I think there's like 65-year-olds and then some 25-year-olds. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing when we think about the adoption of technology, right? Because, which group do we think is going to have a harder time, adopting some of these things? And so, and I mean,
what's interesting though? I'm going to be interested to see how that really shakes out, right? Because the thing, and granted,
the boomer feels attacked. The boomer feels attacked.
No. So the Gen Xer. There's only one thing that Gen Xers hate more than boomers, and that's millennials.
I don't hate any of them.
No, but there's a lot of people, and particularly in PK's generation, that are very anti-AI and are very like anti of adopting it. And like, I was really surprised at a conference I was at recently, and there was somebody who was presenting on AI, and the people in the crowd that were pushing back the hardest were the youngest people in the crowd.
That's interesting.
Which I just found to be a really strange dynamic, because generally, and in my experience, I'm seeing, again, at least the majority of folks my own age and older who I speak to seem to have a really high adoption curve for it. Now, that may be my bubble. I don't know. But again, I'm hearing more pushback from younger people than I am older people.
Okay, so PK, why is that? What do you think?
I have two theories. One, I think it's more so just kind of like natural, like everything's like so tech forward. So like analog becomes cool. Like Andrew's mentioned this before. Like vinyl records are cool, Polaroids are cool. So I think there's kind of like this natural reaction of like, oh, yeah. So like almost like handcrafted things become more, or analog handcrafted things become more of a luxury, right? Because they're a little bit more scarce than some of the other stuff. So that's one angle. I think the other angle is probably just more politically driven, like, you know, fear of like Palantir, OpenAI, like they're just having access to kind of like your data and things like that. So I think it's more of like a political push as well, probably, I would imagine.
I'll tell you something interesting. My daughter, who is 28, and it's interesting. She just had a baby a couple months ago, and she is like, will not post a picture of that baby on any kind of social media.
Smart.
And has said, and she's told us, she's like, you guys don't post any pictures, and definitely do not put any pictures, specifically, she said, in AI.
Yep.
And I'm just going to say she's not a conservative. And so, so it's not but that was interesting to me. So now I'm feeling like I had to pull that thread and ask her, like, what all are you seeing? Because you're right, Andrew, I would not have expected that. But here we are. That's very interesting. Chris, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that the people that I think, Sue, you would probably echo this, is like the high touch mix is going to be, I think if the 25-year-old who hasn't been around enough to know that they're still going to have to be high touch, no amount of, look at my workflow, I barely have to do anything, I got this awesome system in place. It's like, but nobody wants to do business with you. So I think there's going to be a mix of like the personal brand and the high human touch with like using the automation correctly, right? Like if you just come in and be like, I'm just going to kick ass at all this tech and not really kind of be that still a friendly face person that's going to pick up the phone and talk to your realtor, talk to the borrower, I think you're still going to have to mix them together.
Yeah, the mix is the magic, right? It's and I read something the other day where they said most consumers are actually totally okay with AI as long as they can pull the ripcord when they actually need it.
I think choose your own journey, choose your path, right? Like, all right, like we've had this before. Like, I love starting with AI. If you told me there's an AI chatbot, go for it, knowing that I can just go, all right, I'm done, right? Because like 9 out of 10 times you get my answer because I'm, but then there's that one, as you know, Sue, it's like I need to call Delta. Like, this is not which our time's almost up, so we have to touch on the public announcements or PSA. PSA for Travel Girl over here.
So it is interesting because for whatever reason, to me, AI is just a tool. It's just another technological tool, but it's the first tool we've ever talked about that like we talk about in terms of like replacing people, right? Instead of it just replacing tasks, right? Like
augmentation more.
It's more, and I think when people I think if you start to think of it as augmentation and stop thinking of it as replacement, one, you're down the better path, but two, you're going to find better use cases and uses for it when you look at it. I've said this a million times on the show. Just because Home Depot sells saws doesn't mean I'm a finished carpenter. Right? Like, just because AI exists does not mean that I'm a chief marketing officer or a chief technology officer, right? Like, you still need that core of like who you are. Now, it's going to highlight the people who understand what they're good at. And I think that's the bigger part.
The scary hot take that nobody's really talking about is the people that are truly replaceable are the people that are trying to replace people. Like those, like, I'm a strategy guy and I'm looking to replace these guys. Like, dude, that is where you can go into Claude and really just replace that guy. But nobody wants to talk about that.
Interesting.
Okay. So every week, the person from the prior week asks the next person a question. So one thing for your back of your head, Josh Lear is our guest next week. So in a moment, you're going to have to ask a question that you want Josh to answer next week. But Brooke Lapita's question for you was, you obviously are known for airport etiquette. I honestly, there's no person I think of more in airports than Sue Woodard. Every time someone's a prick, I'm like, man, Sue would come for you.
You gotta send it to me. You gotta send it to me.
Especially the people who run. The worst is the people who run from the seats in the back, like the moment it dings, and they're like,
bro, like
I always think of you. Anyways, what is the worst bad airport etiquette story that you have?
I'm gonna tell you I don't know, God, there's so many bad ones. I mean, including probably one of the worst that I see all the time is it's the backpack over the shoulder and literally thumping everybody in the head all the way down the aisle, because it's like every flight, it's like, dude, that thumping noise is someone's head. Like, come on. There's, the bare feet, stuck forward on the footrest, like next to your elbow. I mean, that's a good one.
Oh God, someone's done that? Seriously?
100%. 100%. I have a picture of it. Yeah, it's in my. But I will say the one I had most recently, is it was a guy sitting next to me that it was like I don't know, tech investment bro. And we're in coach. And he's like, bro, no, you got to get in on this, man. You got to get in on this. It's getting hot. And he was talking so loud, full volume about the buy, sell, trade guy, where it's like, dude, we're in coach. Like, we're going to be lucky if we get peanuts. Like, stop with that. But it was loud, and he talked until the flight took off. And I'm like, I don't even know that that's a thing, like what? It was just obnoxious. But people's obnoxiousness never fails. I have seen a toenail clipper on a flight too. Ew. And that was in first class.
Oh,
what? A toenail clipper.
So that fintech guy, Jeff Flory, calls it peacocking. Like, you see it in the lounge, in the airport lounges a lot. Like, guys will walk around who are like talking like as loud as possible.
Make it happen. Fire that guy. Just like,
it reminds me of PE guy, Mace.
Oh man.
It is.
They talk like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So what question would you like Josh?
Oh my gosh, what question to ask Josh Lair? I would actually, he's got some really dang good travel stories. I would actually, I mean, is it fair to pass it forward? Yeah. And you're like, okay, yeah, because we all can appreciate it, and so he's got some good stories. I would ask him, what's the craziest recent travel story that you've had?
Are we going to see you at NBA this year, Sue?
Yeah, I'm going to be at everything. I'm going to be at the Gathering end of April.
You going to Mismo?
No. I know. So, Mismo's.
Here's the
hey, our next guest is Brian View, actually. I'm just kidding.
So the Jedi's March Madness tournament thing. So I did it. The funniest thing is I had Claude do all the picks. Like, literally, it filled out the entire bracket for me. So the night of the championship, I was in third place. And then I woke up and I was like, sweet, I'm going to get like one of these things. I woke up the next morning in seventh place. Yeah. And I was like, I'm like, oh, well, like, I was like, I guess I'm not getting anything. And then I get an email yesterday and they're like, in a weird series of events, it turns out seventh place does win something. Do you want to go to the Mismo Spring Summit for free? And I was like,
I love it.
Sure. That's and awesome. It's driving. Amazing. It's in Louisville, so I can drive to it.
Well,
it's even better.
If you get any good travel stories, if you stop at a Buc-ee's or anything, you let me know.
Flying J. I don't know if we have any Buc-ee's on that route. No.
I don't know. Well, I live in Florida now, so I'm discovering this.
This is a Texas, Florida thing, right?
I don't know.
It wasn't in Florida. Where are you in Florida?
CSTG.
Okay. All right. When I lived in Florida, it was not a Florida thing, but I think they have them now.
Yeah, who knows? But yes, feel free to share your travel stories. I'm always, like I said, looking for new material. But I loved this time together with you all. What a
Dude,
blast.
thank you
Thank you,
so
Sue.
much. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yes.
It's awesome to chat with you always. And ladies and gentlemen, back here next week for episode 45.